So it is 10:30, and so I will call the meeting to order and first acknowledge that we're coming to you today from the traditional territories of the Coast Salish Nations, and we gather with gratitude, and especially given the terrible news that's coming to us about the residential schools. I think that's an appropriately nice gesture today to just think about our neighbors and some of the challenges that they're going through that we can't really even understand, but yeah, has a special meaning to recognition today. So I'm just going to call the meeting to order pursuant to section 4.2 of the Arrowsmith Water Service Joint Venture Agreement. The board must now elect a chair, and this is on the basis of 1 vote per member. Is there anybody who would like to put forward a nomination for chair?
Well, if I may, thank you, Kiva, for getting us started. Previously, we had Mayor Main from Parksville, so if Leanne is okay with it, I wouldn't mind actually nominating Leanne Wallace to be the chair.
Thank you. And does anybody, or I guess first I should confirm with Director Wallace if she would accept that nomination.
I accept the nomination. Thank you.
Thank you. And then we need to call the question. I guess I need a seconder first. Sorry. I don't do this very often.
That's okay.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mayor Main. And now I think I can call the question. Everybody in favor? Okay, and can you maybe speak? I can't see all of you again. This is a lot more challenging on Zoom. I have not been giving you full credit. All in favor? Okay, I'm seeing 2 hands. Mayor Main, you also,
Yes.
you're also.
It was up.
And that is passed then. So I will turn it over to, gladly, to Director Wallace to chair the rest of the meeting.
Thank you, CEO Kevler. I will just find a different version of the agenda because I'm using different screens. So
okay, I'll stop sharing.
Oh, yeah, thank you. That would be helpful. So welcome, and I guess I'll just have a look at the agenda here. So item 3 on the agenda, approval of the agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda? Ed Main, and seconded by Scott Harrison. Any questions, comments, additions? All in favor? Thank you. Approval of the agenda complete. Adoption of the minutes. Item 4 on the agenda. Item 4.1, Arrowsmith Water Service Management Board meeting of December 18th, 2020. Can I have a motion to adopt the minutes? Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Main, and thank you, Scott Harrison. Any comments, questions, additions? No. All in favor? Thank you. Minutes adopted. Item 5 on the agenda, correspondence. I don't believe we have any additional correspondence to the agenda, so we'll proceed to item 6, unfinished business, which I also do not see any comments. Moving forward to item 7, reports. Item 7.1, Arrowsmith Water Service Joint Venture Draft Audited Financial Statements for the year ending December 31st, 2020. I believe I'll be handing over the screen share to Ms. Lenora Lee, if I'm not mistaken. Great. Hello, welcome.
Hi there. Hope you're all doing well. Thanks for having us at the meeting. My name is Lenora Lee, and I'm joined by my colleague, Julie Robinson, who is the manager with KPMG and has been working with me on the audits of the joint venture for the last several years. Included in your package are the draft financial statements of AWS, as well as our audit findings letter, which provides the highlights of the audit procedures we've performed and the findings thereon. The auditor's report, as drafted and included in the package, is a clean and unqualified audit opinion. It indicates that the financial statements are prepared in accordance with the financial reporting standards that are selected by AWS. These do differ from general purpose financial statements because amortization expense is not recorded by the joint venture itself, but rather by the joint venture parties. So the purpose of these statements is primarily to show the cost of the assets that are capitalized and in use. The financial statements themselves are quite straightforward in terms of activity during the year. There was primarily the operating costs of $97,000 and the contributions from the joint ventures. Our audit findings letter includes the status of the audit, which is substantially complete. The only items that remain outstanding at this time are discussion with yourselves as the board and approval of the financial statements. And at that time, we'd be prepared to release our unqualified auditor's report. We also confirm in our audit findings letter our independence, that there are no other services that have been provided that would impair our ability to issue an audit opinion on these statements. In terms of materiality, that is described within our audit reporting letter as well. That has been established at $100,000 for the 2020 fiscal year. And that provides an idea of both overall financial statement materiality, as well as the posting threshold, which is the error threshold, that if we were to note any adjustments or errors in the financial statements, we would request for adjustment. And that was established at 5,000. So essentially any adjustments that we would have noted would have been recommended or included in our letter. And we didn't note any adjustments to the financial statements as a result of our audit procedures. And so there, you'll see that there have been no adjusted or unadjusted differences. There was one new audit standard that was implemented in the year, and that related to auditing estimates, requiring more thorough and detailed procedures around auditing estimates. We have identified no significant estimates within the financial statements of AWS. So we did primarily perform scoping procedures, but we're not required to go down into that level of detail as required by the new standard this year. There were no changes to the accounting policies or significant disclosures within these financial statements. And we have not noted any significant or material control deficiencies to bring to your attention. We do evaluate the impact of COVID-19 on these financial statements, and based on the nature of the operations, have not noted any significant impacts for the fiscal 2020 year. Those were the highlights of the findings letter that we wanted to touch on, and happy to address any questions you have on the statements or findings report.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. Is there anyone that has any questions? Any comments? I have one question, but I believe that it's a question for staff, which we could probably address after motions have been brought forward. So with no further questions, I'm wondering if there's a member of the committee that would like to move item 1 under 7.1, that the Arrowsmith Water Service Joint Venture Audited Financial Statement be received.
Pardon me.
Thank you, Mayor Main, seconded by Scott Harrison. All in favor? Thank you. And item number 2. Do I have a mover for item number 2? Thank you, Scott Harrison, seconded by Mayor Main, that the Arrowsmith Water Service Joint Venture Audited Financial Statement be approved. All in favor? Great, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Lee. So moving on to item 7.2, Arrowsmith Water Service Joint Venture Audit Findings Letter. So yes, did we have any further presentation or comments on the letter required?
No further comments for the presentation.
Ms. Lee, Mr. Harrison, are you moving that motion?
Yeah, sure. And then just briefly, I just want to say thank you to KPMG for all their work.
Thank you. Yeah. Great, thank you. So moved by Councillor Harrison, seconded by Mayor Main. All in favor? Received, thank you. Item 7.3, Arrowsmith Water Service Operations Update, a verbal update from Mr. Doxey, City of Parksville. Welcome. I don't see you yet, but I know you're here. There you are. Thank you.
Sorry, Joe, you're currently muted at the moment.
Sorry about that. You should see the presentation screen in front of you, hopefully now. Just go over, I guess, our biannual to annual kind of verbal update. You can see our Arrowsmith Dam is full, up at 828.5 meters. And it gives you the general location and some old screenshots and pictures. Here is the water level in the dam reservoir. As you kind of can see, we are floating just slightly below average, but well within our max and our means, and we are effectively at the spill point or full. This is probably worthy mention in consideration of the next two slides that are kind of the snow pillow and the rainfall. So if you look at the snow pillow, it looks like we've had a bit of a snowier than normal year. This is a very recent taken from last week snow pillow screenshot, again from the pillow gauge website from the province. And then here you can see that going along with that snow pillow buildup, there's it turns out when it snows there's less rain, so we are at the lower thresholds there for our average rain coming in. And then you can kind of see where we're sitting, I guess, in terms of kind of annual rains over the course of the years there, with kind of amber and oranges kind of tending to be the older years, or sorry, the newer years, and the bluer colors lending towards maybe the more older years. So here, probably another area of interest is our hydrometric monitoring station that we use for regulating the control and discharge of our dam, as well. Quite a bit of private individuals are referring to the website there, run by the province on behalf of both the city and the government of Canada. It incurred, you may not notice, there's a bit of a gap in data here between September and beginning of May. So there was some vandalism done at the old hydrometric monitoring station. It was under the Big Orange Bridge. Since that time, a new monitoring station has been erected and installed, and it is in a much more conspicuous place that should lend itself much less well to vandalism and habitation. There is a good shot of the new in-river probe, and it sends its information and data up to the control box in here, and then internet connection through there via an antenna. Some of the 2021 projects, just a quick overview, is the dam safety review. That's still in the works, staff working on an RFP, the 10-year, and that's the 10-year comprehensive dam safety review. The hydrometric monitoring station repairs, that is now done and complete and up and running. Is there any other questions concerning the operations, maintenance, or key projects for the AWS? And that said, I will turn it back over to Madam Wallace, the Director Wallace.
Thank you, Joe. Yes, if you could just stop sharing your screen so I can see again, that would be great. Thank you. I'm going to have to buy a bigger monitor for these meetings right at the end before we open back up. So I believe where we found ourselves to on the agenda was 7.3, and if there's no further questions for Mr. Doxey, we'll move on to 7.4. That the report from the Arrowsmith Water Service Management Committee dated June 1st be received. Moved by Mayor Main, seconded by Councillor Harrison. All in favor? Approved. Item number 2 on the agenda, that under 7.4, that the Arrowsmith Water Service Management Board approve the 1-year extension. So did I miss something, or did staff want to introduce this motion regarding the extension of the agreement?
I have a report on that for us, if I may.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, it's today would have been a good day for paper. So thank you, Ms. Woods. Go ahead.
Okay, so in December 2020, our agreement did end between the City of Parksville, Qualicum Beach, and the RDN. There is language in the agreement, though, that we do have the ability to extend for the 6 months, which at that point, staff was tasked to look at renewing the agreement. And the RDN had sought legal opinion. And in reviewing those documents, we realized that we need more time to go through it and update all the pieces that we need to update. Now, some of the things that we need to update is some language, some legal language that needs to be completed. And we want to look at just, clarifying chair terms and practices and make sure that we have a very robust agreement going for the next 5 years. So we have 3 options to present to you today. One is to extend the current agreement for 1 year to end June 30th of 2022 to give staff time, as well as legal, as well as this board, time to review the document. The other option is just to renew the current document for 5 years with no changes to it at all, or to provide us with alternate direction. So what we are recommending, your staff is recommending, is that you receive my report, that you approve a 1-year extension, and that you approve a budget increase of $5,000 to help with any of the additional legal fees that we have outstanding.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Ms. Woods? Go ahead.
Just very briefly, that sounds quite reasonable to me. I think we do have to have indication that there is an agreement in place. Otherwise, we're in a very tricky situation. And also, too, as the provincial regulatory landscape shifts continually, it's always a good idea to double check the language to make sure that we have a legally enforceable agreement, as opposed to just an agreement that was enforceable 5 years ago. So it seems quite reasonable.
And I just, in your package as well, you should have a 1-year sort of a extension letter that I put together just for you to take back to your board and councils to say that we're all in agreement that 1 year is what we would like to do.
Great, thank you, Ms. Woods. So Mr. Harrison, would you like to move the recommendation then? So moved.
Yes.
Yep, seconded by Mayor Main. Any further questions, comments? Nope. Approved. So simple with 3. Okay, so I will just backstep just a minute to clarify on the agenda. I had already moved and we had already received the report. Then Mrs. Woods spoke to it. Now we've moved number 2, I believe, which is to approve the 1-year extension. And now moving on to number 3 in regards to the $5,000 budget for legal fees. Mr. Harrison would like to move that as well. Thank you. Seconded by Mayor Main. Great. All in favor? Great, approved. Thank you. Do we have any new business for the agenda? I don't see any in the package. Questions, comments? I see 5 minutes each. I think that's just a template. And if there were no further comments, oh, thank you, Ms. Keller. Go ahead. Thank you.
For me, the 5 minutes limit is for public comments, not for elected officials. So we usually open it when this is much easier in person, but we usually open it up to the floor for public comments, and those folks are limited to 5 minutes so that everyone has a chance to speak, but elected officials are not bound by that.
Oh, that's a good thing. Thank you for the clarification. And I guess because we're in a Zoom format, I'm unaware that there's any public members that would like to speak to this agenda today. So on that, Mr. Harrison, go ahead.
Oh, just briefly to follow up on what Keith was saying earlier, regarding everything that's going on in the world right now in Canada, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, you can look at the testimony of people who've been through residential school, and it's a good document to read if you haven't already.
Thank you. Yep, thank you. So if there's no further business for this agenda, can I have a motion to adjourn, please? Scott Harrison, seconded by Mayor Main. All in favor? Great, thank you. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Director Wallace, for running that through at such great speed. Well done, and I want to try and do the first part of this meeting at least that way. I understand Lenora has a meeting to go to, so let's move on. I'd like to call the ERWS meeting to order at this particular time. Welcome, everybody, and good morning. I would like to request a approval of the agenda. Do I have a mover and seconder for the recommendation to approve the agenda? Sorry, yeah, okay. Once again, small screen. I'm with Director Wallace here. Thank you, Director Rogers, and a seconder for this. Thank you, Director Wallace. Are there any omissions or errors? All those in favor? All those opposed? This is carried. Thank you. Next, we'll go to the adoption of the minutes of the Englishman River Water Service Management Board meeting held on February 16th, 2021. Do I have a mover and seconder for the recommendation that the minutes of the Englishman River Water Service Management Board meeting held February 16th, 2021 be adopted? Could I have a mover? Thank you, Mayor Main, and thank you, Director Wallace as seconder. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Since there's no correspondence, we'll move on. Since there's no unfinished business, I'll move on. Unless, please correct me if anyone has noted something that I couldn't find. Yes, Director Rogers. Yes, please.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. Yeah, just when you did that notice on the minutes, you referenced February 26th. The agenda I has references the minutes of the Englishman Water Service and Management Board meeting of May 19th, 2021.
Let me back up for you, sir. I believe Mr. Director Rogers is correct. I just looked at my notes that I had for speaking notes here that the minutes of the Englishman River Water Service Management Board meeting held May 19th. Is that correct, Director Rogers?
And that's the copy I have.
Yeah, okay, that's the
Sorry to interrupt, Chair Brian. If
Yes.
I may, I believe that the revised agenda was sent by Rebecca, and I think the correct date is February. It looks like perhaps Director Rogers has the earlier version. Is that correct? Can I get the RDN maybe to confirm? Yes. So you were correct the first time.
Yeah, that's right.
February. And I believe that there was a revised one sent out. So yes, February is the correct date.
Yeah, there was a typo in the initial issue and then it was sent out correctly after that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Director Rogers.
No, yeah, thank you. That's good.
Okay, thank you very much for that correction. Yes, we're looking on corrected issues and non-corrected, so thank you. Let's moving on to reports. We have a report from Ms. Lee from KPMG. Please introduce the draft audited financial statements for the year ending December 31, if you will, Lenore.
Great, thank you. So very similar in terms of status as well as accounting framework for the ERWS financial statements as compared to AWS. This one certainly has a little bit more activity given that it became operational in the year. And so to discuss some of the highlights of the financial activity and our audit procedures, I'll turn it over to Julie here.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'll just touch on the ERWS draft financial statements and audit findings letter that you have in your agenda package today. We have substantively completed our audit of the ERWS financial statements with no outstanding matters other than the acceptance and approval of the financial statements here by the board today. And we have prepared an overall unqualified clean audit opinion, indicating there is no material misstatements in the financial statements. The opinion is prepared, as with prior years, with reference to Note 1 to highlight the basis of accounting is slightly different as no amortization is recorded in the joint ventures. In our findings letter, we have highlighted the materiality of the financial statements as a whole is $700,000, and this is based on total assets of 42 million, consistent with prior years. New to this year, we have included a materiality for $21,000 for expenses, so we can perform additional procedures over expenses to that lower materiality level. So a $21,000 materiality for expenses gives us just $1,050 reporting threshold for reporting errors to yourselves, to the board today. So we decided to do this given the introduction of the full year of operations in 2020. We assessed this to be important to the users of the financial statements. And total expenses for 2020 were $820K. As Lenora mentioned, we have a new audit standard that impacts all audits we perform. Over estimates, as Lenora said, and also in ERWS, there were no significant estimates from our assessment. As I mentioned, due to the lower materiality for expenses, we did perform new procedures this year. This included testing purchases to third-party invoices, testing payroll to cash payment. Through this testing, we did identify a few small cut-off errors for expenses. This meaning that costs that were incurred around year-end were recorded in the incorrect period. So one of these was for $11,000. This was recorded in 2021, which should have been recorded in 2020. And opposite to that, there was $7,700 recorded in 2020, but actually related to services not in 2020. These were chosen to be uncorrected by management, given the small immaterial values, and we had agreed with that. To touch on as well, in regards to capital classification, this was a large piece of work undertook by management this year that included the finance and engineering departments. They reviewed the classification and useful life of those $42 million worth of tangible capital assets. And these were the assets that became fully operational at the end of 2019. We reviewed this assessment by management and agree that the assets are now more accurately allocated into the relevant asset categories, and this allows for a more precise estimate of the amortization expense that flows up to the joint venture members. We also note that management included an additional schedule you'll see on the last page of the financial statements to show how the capital costs were apportioned amongst the joint venture members. To also touch on COVID-19, we just to report that there was no significant impact to our audit procedures or the reporting on the financial statements for ERWS due to COVID. This is the second year we have performed the audits essentially remotely, and we received access to all the documentation and support to complete everything appropriately. As I already mentioned, the uncorrected misstatements, there was no other corrected misstatements as part of the audit. But we do include the prior year uncorrected misstatement just because we do have 2019 comparable figures in the financial statements also. I'll also confirm again that as part of our audit procedures, we didn't note any significant or material differences in internal control. We did just add a small recommendation, although immaterial, just to enhance the year-end procedures over cut-off to reduce any risk that there may actually be material cut-off errors at year-end. Yeah, that's the reporting. Finally, I would just take the opportunity to say thanks again to the finance team for this audit and AWS. It's always more challenging to complete new audit procedures with the new operations in ERWS. So we really appreciate being able to work for management through that this year. And that's us. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Julie and Lenore, for your presentations. I'll just go through the approvals first, and then we'll introduce questions from the board, if I could. Do I have a mover and seconder for the recommendation that the Englishman River Water Service Joint Venture Draft Audited Financial Statement be received and approved? Moved by Director Wallace, seconded by Director Rogers. Are there any questions for staff or any discussion? Director Wallace.
Thank you. I just have a quick question about accumulated surplus. There's a note that's quite explanatory about how the town of Qualicum Beach has a reserve in this service. I'm just wondering why that amount isn't separately listed.
I believe that is a purchase that has been distributed amongst the other two members and noted as a buyback option. And so it is noted as an addition and a reallocation within the statement of operations.
Thank you.
Any other questions at this time? Thank you. All those in favor? All those opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Moving on to the next part of the report. I believe, did you cover this as well, Lenora and Julie? This was covered in your initial.
Yes, that's right.
Thank you. Do I have a mover and seconder for the recommendation that the Englishman River Water Service Joint Venture Audit Findings Letter be received? I need a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Mayor Main, seconded by Director Rogers. Thank you. Are there any questions or staff regarding this latest recommendation? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? That is carried and defeated. Thank you very much for your help, Lenora and Julie. Very well done as well. I see also our CAO Kaler with their hand up, please.
Yes, if I may, Chair O'Brien, just want to confirm that the board received and approved for item 1. I've just heard that the call was to receive, but I assume that the board was receiving and approving together. That was moved by Councillor Director Wallace and Director Rogers, and we did report it as all in favor, but I just want to clarify for the minutes that that was receive and approve. I just might have missed it, but.
That's what I heard when Director Wallace indicated moving.
I'm sorry, Kiva, your transmission totally broke up. Maybe it's just mine, I'm not sure, but I missed that last bit. Sorry, I did for the last 2 minutes there.
Yes, my apologies. I'm having the same issues, I think, but I believe staff have confirmed that it was receive and approve. So I apologize. I just wanted to make sure it was both before we move forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Kiva. Okay, I just went to a different page here, so I'll get back to it here. Thank you. Moving on. Now we have reports, item 6 on the agenda. Mr. Doxey, could you please provide your update regarding Englishman River water service options at this time? Thanks, Joe.
I'm unmuted. Yes, Chair O'Brien. Bit of an overview of the last partial year here of the Englishman Water Treatment Plant construction and operating conditions over the course of the year. This might be a familiar slide. We keep it in here because if there are questions, it does bring us to something to go back to. There's not a lot of new information, but you will see in here that we've added in kind of the general location of where what we're calling the Geo-bags or the waste residual handling system will be located. So it's kind of right here by the blue dot, just for reference sake. Again, there's just another kind of an old slide, but a good one to go back to should there be questions around different operating conditions or technical issues. Just kind of gives you the picture of the intake structure, where it goes to the strainers, through the membranes, through the UV, and then into storage in the high lift and out to the system. And then there's our chemical treatment for backwashing our membranes as well, as kind of depicted in here. Some priorities of interest here to go over, some operational challenge that staff and Director Woods has been working through. The deficiency list and warranty items some recent items. Some are smaller than others and some are bigger, but one is the UVT analyzer. So it basically analyzes the effectiveness of the UV as it's going through the system. With it malfunctioning, it still is getting UV treatment. It's just that it's getting it at kind of a maxed out treatment level. So it's just not quite as efficient. So we do need to get that equipment back up and running so that we can kind of go back to safely running the plant at an optimal level, if you will. So it shouldn't be overly complicated repair, but it is, just a simple warranty maintenance item. Second stage cleaning. So this went down some time ago, and staff are working out with the consultants that designed the plant and the process engineers just exactly how to get in and clean some of the equipment. It sat for a while, and it's trying to figure out how to get this just mechanically cleaned out of the tank. The SCADA system, nuisance alarm and warning systems. So the SCADA system, think of it like a sense of a system or a network of relays. You'll hear a word programmable logic controller, or PLC. That's kind of where the operators change the inputs, but the SCADA system is kind of like a complicated system relays, if you will. It basically just inputs or accepts information coming in and makes decisions based on operator inputs from the PLC. So we're getting some nuisance alarms and just bugs that we have to work out through. And that's still in process. The sand separator and strainer reviews. So you recall, I think the last time we did a presentation, we went over some of the issues with, occasionally in high flow storm events, the plant would run into some clogging issues or fouling of the membranes. And so we're just working through some of those with some of the other membrane process review engineering. And one of those steps is looking at the sand separators just to see how they're functioning, if they're functioning as designed, if there's any tweaks that we should be doing or making. Some of the successes that have happened here over the last while is chemical handling refresher training, membrane cleaning improvements. I don't know the exact level, but from what I understand is they're coming back to much closer to original condition. We restored a lot of the fouling that occurred in that first year. Sodium hydroxide safety improvements. So it's a basically safe, well, it is what it is, like safe handling procedures, and some of the issues with the pumps that we've had on that equipment being fixed, replaced, and set up so they don't fail in quite the same manner as they did the first time, or one pump did the first time. There's another one here, the finished water, treated water probe improvements. So there was a post-treated chlorine analyzer that has been installed. And then again, like SCADA reporting improvements. So kind of related back to those nuisance alarms, there's been quite a bit of improvement. It's just, there's still more to go. Multiple repairs and improvements throughout the plant, just as our team gets to know the plant and gets more familiar with the whole bits and nuts and bolts of it. Again, just a big kind of thank you to the commitment of our operators. They've worked some long hours. They've had some call outs. They've really kind of put in how you say, the extra steps to help make this thing a success. Whoops. Let's see. Some of the small projects from this year that you may recall from the budget time is that, again, that finished water chlorine analyzer, environmental monitoring, or the fish habitat offsetting plan. So that's in the works. It went out to it went out through our statement of qualification process earlier in the year and failed to result in a negotiable contract. So we've gone back out to a second round of requesting proposals. That's just fairly recent in the last week, the last week or so. The scissor lift, so that's not been procured yet, but staff are working through the details of what they would need there that would fit within the plant and the surroundings. The membrane analysis project, that has kicked off. The membrane condition assessment, and that has kicked off, and the raw water pump seal modification, that project is also kicked off as of this morning, actually. Some of the larger projects that are going on are that aforementioned the Geo-bag, and I'll have a slide or two on that here later on. The flush water pump, that's that freshwater seal pump. It's basically a lubricated seal, and ironically, if you look in the background images here, it's kind of up in here in these in the pumps. So just kind of a strategically placed picture in the presentation. And then sampling from the sand separators. Well, if you're looking at the picture in the thing, those would be just behind us against the opposite wall. And just basically status updates, just we are still steadily moving out of the construction and more into the operating phase. And one of the more recent issues that we're working on is just kind of finalizing some of the legal agreements with the ICF and the SVR statutory right-of-way for the occupation of the side of the rail bed there. We did have agreement in principle. There was some outstanding agreements that we had to work through for maintenance of crossings, where there was some fees that were due that were paid up, cleared, and we are in good standings now with ICF and SVR. Now on to a little bit about the Geo-bag system, since that will get a little bit of interest. The design of the system is sitting right now at about 35%. We are expecting 65% drawings here in very short order. So right now, the preliminary design, we've got the siting kind of situated. The site plan is done. They're working through the hydraulic or the pipework connections to the plant, into the plant, as well as the electrical connections. So one of the things, one of the issues there is what SCADA system does it hook into, and then how does it hook into the PLC so that the operators can control and regulate and monitor this this system in the main control room for the plant. So that it is similarly, I guess, to the aforementioned UVT. We want to run the thing efficiently and effectively, and of course safely. So that is, we've got some decisions on that made. There were, I think, 3 or 4 options that we had to run through various scenarios. We're just awaiting kind of some final, a final proposal, basically from the one of the companies that set up one of the SCADA systems, just to get a feel for how much it would cost to integrate into that SCADA system versus the other SCADA system. So just nitty-gritty details. Kind of a picture of what that might look like. It's a simple, what we call a pump on a skid with, you know, this is not a picture of ours. It'll be one just like this, but it'll be something like that with a tote with a coagulant and pump all controlled by SCADA system. This would be something like what that looks like. Some of the controls and things that you can see for decision matrices that would go through a SCADA system. What I guess for size and scale kind of gives you a bit of a picture of what these filtration bags look like. A kind of process in terms of designing the coagulant mix. So you can see kind of the pre-flocculated jar test, and then the flocculated, and this would be the final product that would come out of the Geo-bag system, and it would meet all the environmental regulations for a water discharge from such a facility. So that's yeah, it's just a picture of the fill tank. You can see it's got some berms around to control any spillage, direct the runoff into a location that doesn't cause erosion or other issues. I guess another question that's come up, you know, around the ERWS is the clay banks and its impacts on the operations of the facility. And so just from a very high level perspective, there has been some sloughing of this clay banks earlier in the year, particularly back in February. The failure in sediment loading was an anticipated part of this project. The threat was considered within the scope of the water treatment siting when it was originally feasibility studies undertaken. That's when they selected this ultra filtration membrane treatment process that would effectively, these contaminants that might bond to the clay particles that would, you know, be sloughing off into the river. That is why they went with the ultra filtration membrane process, is it could effectively remove those contaminants, deal with the clay, and it could be backwashed quite easily. Prior to construction, in fact, they did a fair amount of study, and a pilot test was undertaken. They did some testing with some specific large amounts of debris taken directly from the clay banks to make sure that it would actually handle the clay bestowed to that area that they were of concern. During the testing, the clay bank turbidity and the color were analyzed, and during the plant construction, measures were put into place to offset any clay bank failures and thereby ensuring the purity of the water from the plant. So what that means is we've got a bit of a operating kind of guiding document internally that we use for what level of monitoring we would need to do, what level of shutdown we would need to do, what level of notification to higher level provincial or EMO authorities that we would need to do to make sure that we can continue to provide safe drinking water. Let's see. And then, of course, we did have this clay bank sloughing back in February, and we were able to follow that with some of the plant diagnostics that you'll see in the last slide. So what ended up happening was just as it was designed, the clay particles were small enough to pass through the sand separators and strainers. They did not clog up. And then they did get caught in the membrane system that were able to be easily washed off through the backwash cycles after the event in a subsequent day or days. When operations staff had time. During a clay bank event, the situation is just simply, it's carefully monitored and adjustments made as required. And again, we do have a bit of an informal guidance document as to, what kind of level of steps we need to take so that we know when notification to CAO is needed, when notification to councils, or like I say, EMO or provincial upper level authorities would be needed. Director of Operations is working with the Manager of Communications on a more bespoke news release explaining how this process is managed with around the treatment in the water treatment plant. So that should be coming out very shortly. Here's just a bit of a picture of kind of the scale of what did transpire back in February to kind of give a good picture. So you can see in October, I also should mention these photos were provided by the Mid-Vancouver Island Habitat Enhancement Society. They were taken with a drone, and they very clearly depict a bit of a broad, high-level scale of how much material was sloughed off. So you can see there's a pretty wide, almost like a row of trees. It could be 3 meters or 10 or 15 feet, 20 feet, probably in the 10-15 feet range, but there's no scale bar, but you can certainly see that it's at least the width of a row of trees in there. And then similarly, you can see here in March, after the October photo, you can see in the March where there's a fair amount of width and depth of material that's, how you say, no longer present, that has gone down the river. Our main, I guess I should reinforce, our main directive is the clay banks are actually out of town. They're not in city jurisdiction, but we have to be able to regulate and operate our facility to accommodate that. And so this is our bottom line end target, and that is clean, safe drinking water. And as you can see there in February, when the clay banks kind of came through, the only real impact was our color came up a little bit, and this is based on what they call I think TCU, true color units. I believe it goes to 15, with 6 is our informal target. It's an aesthetic objective, but we are able to meet it. Anyhow, that's kind of the picture of what's happened, and you can see our chlorine levels are able to hold out, and you can see also our finished water turbidity is also able to keep up. So, end of the day, it seems to be doing what it was designed to do. And I'll turn it back over to Chair O'Brien.
Thanks very much, Joe, for a great presentation as always. And first and foremost, before I forget to mention, thanks to an incredible staff you got. Your staff are dealing with moving goalposts. In this case, the goalposts are hopefully not at the top of the clay bank, but this time they're doing amazing work to rectify situations as they appear. And be sure and send our appreciation to them, that we appreciate their diligence and hard work on this. I have a question going back to the Geo-bag slide that you presented. That just kind of blew me away, seeing that beached whale up on the surface there. It was interesting. The question being, Joe, is that I understand when it diffuses out of the geo-bag type of thing, when they're located, that it will be released to water. You said it will meet all environmental standards to being released. Would that just be released into the gravel pit area that you're around, or would it actually be introduced into the waste and sewer system?
I guess if I may, through the chair, yeah, it would go to the final details are yet to be worked out, but in general terms, it would go to the existing gravel kind of pond area to infiltrate back into the subsurface groundwater. It may, again, some of this is to be dealt with in final design. It may be swaled or piped to a discharge location to the river. I'm not sure yet to that level of detail. But certainly on the face of it, it could be as simple as the swales around the bags and then just surface drained off to the low infiltration pond pit at the bottom of the operations yard. So
thank you. And as a follow-up, if I may, then those geo-bags themselves will, at one point, I would think, with the coagulants and the silt and so forth, they're going to become full. So my question is, do those geo-bags simply get trucked away? What's your process in taking care of those bags once they're filled? Are they trucked away and are they replaced, or are they flushed, or what's the process here?
The process is they simply disconnect the bag, turn off the intake line or supply line to that bag, switch the valve to the other bags, and they scoop that bag up with a backhoe into the back of a gravel truck and take it to the landfill.
Excellent. Excellent.
Okay. And then you obviously have to buy a new bag. So they're
right.
Anticipated. Yeah, sorry.
No, I remember from your original presentation, you were including the purchase of extra bags or backup bags as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I just had to get an understanding of that, and it would make excellent landfill. I can get that. Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Doxey while we're all here? Seeing none.
Sorry.
Thank you
Chair
very much,
O'Brien.
Joe. Sorry.
Sorry, Chair O'Brien, I have a quick question. If you don't mind.
Sorry, Director Wallace, I missed you there. Yeah, go ahead.
That's okay. Just a question through the chair to staff, if I might, in regards to the clay bank event that happened in February. Did we hear that there was a closure or no closure was required, even with that significant event?
Let me turn that over to Belinda Woods, the operations manager. I wouldn't want to be inaccurate.
Yeah, no, our operators and the operations of the plant were able to manage the event. We did make some dosing adjustments and we did make some significant reviews of it, but we did not have to shut down the plant for any length of time.
Great, thank you. Just a quick follow-up. Is there any, we know where the clay banks are. I mean, it's a significant piece of the river we're all familiar with now. Is there any means to put any notification via remote testing in place of a clay bank shed event? Or is it just when it hits the intake that you recognize that perhaps another event has occurred? Is there any preventative measuring that could be established there?
I guess I'll address this. And there's not immediately. It's again, it's out of our jurisdiction, and so it's not our land. It would be something that we would internally review with staff in preparation for budgets, if it's something that we think there would be a value. And again, this would with staff and consultation with the engineering consultants. If we thought there was a value to say set up GPS or survey monument system to track it, then we would do such. But at this point, there's not been a need expressed. But, and back to Belinda.
If I could just add to that is, I mean, because it's a known issue, it's something that we monitor quite closely. We also have alarm systems of that in place for when we have high or low rivers. We have that notification for us to help us determine, hey, what's causing these things upstream? Because clay banks is just one of the many things that could cause fluctuations for us. Also, depending on the rains that we get to, will be how fast the water can clear itself. It also depends on how much other organics that are naturally occurring in there. So it's something that we can keep an eye on, but we don't have any sort of alarm warning system to say, hey, something has fallen, because we need to have that viewpoint that we have to look at all of the issues as the water's coming down and how fast or how slow it is and how we can accommodate those different issues.
Great, thank you.
So just to follow up on Director Wallace, if I could, Belinda, so it would appear then you have the procedures in place and you're just managing it as the situations develop, whether it's turbidity or whether it's clay bank sloughing. You've had some pretty good experience now with these, and so you're just preparing to manage it as it comes up, and you have procedures in place, and you just monitor that way by, as you say, by your river flow. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. So even with our pre-testing and putting together the design and everything, this is one of those situations that was really clearly defined in all pre-construction and in construction of actually the membrane and all that whole entire system. The membranes are able to handle the clay banks at this point with how much has been coming down. It's just a matter of us working how much water's coming in versus how much dosing is happening. So to this date, we have not had, and February was a significant event. We have not had a clay bank issue that has affected our plant production or even our water quality. Looking at the stats of one of the slides there, we have up to about a 15 for color, and we are even with the clay banks. We were well beyond, well below that number. And you can see how quickly, I don't know if you quickly saw the dates, you can see how quickly we managed to even get it even farther down. So it's fortunately one of the things that we have in the plant that was well planned and well expected, and it is working as we had hoped it to work.
Thank you very much for that, those reports anyways, Joe and Belinda. Thank you very much. If there's any further questions regarding this, I'll move on to Ms. Woods. Seeing none, okay, let's carry on to Ms. Woods. Could you please give us background of your report regarding Englishman River Water Service Joint Venture Agreement Extension?
Thank you, Chairman O'Brien. So similarly to the AWS, but slightly different. Our agreement also ended December 31st of 2020 with that same provisional time for us to come up with a new agreement. With this one, the language needs to be changed for legal reasons, but also because we want to move from that construction phase into that operational phase. So there's some pieces in here that we want to be able to highlight and vet through with legal, with staff, as well as yourselves. So once again, we are asking for a 1-year extension. And same thing with our analysis, we're looking at different governance terms, operational terms that weren't present back in 2016 because we were still under construction. So staff is recommending that you receive my report, that you approve a 1-year extension. Once again, we're asking for the $5,000 to be added to the budget for legal fees. And I've also included, once again, a 1-year extension sort of letter of agreement that we could take back to councils and boards for their approval. So we can have some time to work out some of the legal bits that we would like to make sure we have in good standing.
Thank you, Belinda. You just, I see Director Rogers with his hand up. Yes, Director Rogers, proceed.
Yeah, I was going to move the 3 recommendations under 6.4. Recommendations 1, 2, and 3.
Thank you. That is moved by Director Rogers. Do I have a seconder by Director Wallace? I see. Thank you very much. Are there any further questions for staff or discussion regarding this motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much. Under new business, moving on here under new business, does any other member have any new business they'd like to bring up at this time? I'm scanning. Seeing none, I have new business, and I would like to bring it up at this time if I could, with the intent of having a discussion with all board members here. I'd like to propose a motion for RDN staff in concert with a qualified consultant to prepare a study to report on consumption and supply capacity of the ERWS. If I have a seconder on that, I can move on and I can describe further. So it's basically a motion to have RDN staff prepare a report for the current values and of supply and consumption currently in the ERWS. The supply capacity would report on storage and river and drilled wells capacity. And then the consumption report would also apply to how much usage we're doing in between our partners and so forth. Basically, how much water do we have, folks, and how much water are we using? And the intent of this is to actually prepare a report to know do we have enough water due to two things, which is climate change and also the droughts we've been running into, and also the increase in development that we're having everywhere. So the thing is that if we could have a report from staff, I think it would be very wise and prudent to have this at this time. Because basically I've asked questions from different departments and everybody has a little bit of information, like as in how much the water treatment plant will put out. But I'd say, how much does the city of Parksville use in the day, and how much does it use in August, and how much does Nanoose use, the type of thing. And so I get little reports, but it's not a final report. And then I say, well, how much do we have? And Joe Doxey just gave us a presentation on what the snow pillow looks like in the dam. But it doesn't tell me how much water flow do we have in August, like supply and demand. So I think it would be prudent, because we don't have anywhere, folks. We are running into situations where a territory that this water system has never gone through, with extreme climate events happening now, type of thing, and quite the extreme amount of building and development we have. So I'm throwing this open to the management board here, just for advice and hope. Director Rogers.
Yeah, thanks, Doug, and through you, perhaps to Mr. Walters, because I noticed you have references as an RDN staff prepare a report. I'll see what Mr. Walters. One, I know this isn't in our budget to do this. Two, I'm just wondering where Mr. Walters thinks this would be approached, or how he thinks it would be approached, and the capacity to prepare that road on a timely manner.
Thanks. Through the chair, I can offer a few pieces of information, I guess, related to this.
Sure. Excuse me, Mr. Walters, if you would, for a second. Just a point of order, just so I understand. Did we have a seconder on the motion?
No.
We need a seconder before we continue the conversation.
Do I have a seconder for discussion? Really? How do we have a discussion with all the board members present if we can't talk about these things?
I will second your motion for discussion only.
Thank you, Director Wallace. Now, if we can carry on and go back to Mr. Walters, please. You were just starting to explain.
Thanks, through the chair. A couple of things, I guess. First of all, definitely we don't have any items in our work plan to do this in the coming year, which is a thing to be aware of. I would point that out. The second thing I would point out is that the actual management responsibility for the ERWS resides with the city of Parksville, so it would probably have to be a city of Parksville activity rather than an RDN activity. Not that we are happy to contribute, but that's not our role in the joint venture. And I guess thirdly, I would just throw out that, there was extensive water supply, water consumption, water distribution work done in the formative years of the ERWS that laid out, you know, the best impressions of climate change at the time. Admittedly, they're not the same as they are today, but they were considered, as well as all of the known development at the time in the city and the electoral area E in terms of where that water supply was supposed to go and how long it was supposed to last, and you know the amount of development it was intended to support. So there is a large body of work that's been done on that, as far as you know what sort of population it's intended to support. Now that obviously doesn't talk about the day-to-day or month-to-month usage by the partners in there, which I think you know that information is starting to emerge with the reports that Belinda's providing on a monthly basis. But that's, you know, those are the highlights from my perspective, at least.
Thank you. So you say that study was done prior. Approximately when was that done, Mr. Walters? Do you know
I've got it across in my bedroom here somewhere, but it was done in the I think the late 90s, as the AWS was transitioning to the away from the storage only into a usage kind of facility. So there was extensive work done at that time before the ERWS sort of was formed.
So at that particular point, it took into consideration Director Rogers' territory and so forth, and because
it did. In fact, it took all of the City of Parksville's known data, electoral area E's known data, and electoral area G's known data at the time, as well as the town of Qualicum Beach. And then as the AWS morphed into the ERWS, that's when the ERWS became more just became a City of Parksville and an electoral area E water service. So that's there was a lot of work done back then looking at the amount of water required for all those areas.
At that time, did it actually look at like drought and extreme weather events and so forth? Did it look at data such as that too, Mr. Walters?
It did. It included climate change effects that were known or being considered at the time, which you know you would look at that now and say, well, it didn't really match what we would do if we were doing the study again now. But certainly those effects were considered in the work that was done by the sort of level of information that was available in the day. And an interesting side note to the whole study that was done is both the city and the RDN electoral area E are significantly behind in terms of development by what was projected in those documents in the year that they were done. So
thank you. Good information. Thank you. And I saw Director Rogers had your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Chair O'Brien. And I can certainly understand your interest in looking at this, but I would suggest that if we're going to do it, that we give some consideration to that at a different meeting. Certainly in the future, and we take a look for 2022 as to whether or not that gives us a second year of operation, and it'll also give us a better idea over a broader number of years since the operation to look up at the usage information and so on. But it would certainly have to, in my mind, would have to be a report done jointly with the RDN and the city. And also it would have to reflect, like Mr. Walters says, that the development since this project and the ERWS was formed, the development hasn't been as significant as it was projected. And certainly the electoral area, E area and Parksville are both below where those projections were when we looked at the full build out for this, that was for the areas that were going to be supplied water with this treatment plant and intake. So I can see doing this in 2022 or 2023. I think it's a bit premature on that, but it's something that I know staff monitor on a regular basis. They know how much water is going to each area. So I think that's I see Mr. Walters has his hand up again. So,
yes, and thank you, Director Rogers, for your comments. I appreciate your input. And Mr. Walters has your hand up. I believe, are you still there?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair O'Brien. I just wanted to mention one additional point is that as part of all this work that was done in the formation of the ERWS, the fact that we've got the treatment plant operating and the intake working and everything is good. I mean, we heard from Joe that the system's running well, or from Belinda and Joe that the system's working well, but there is other elements of the ERWS that are out there. If you look in the plans that were put into place and started to build in 2013 or so, and that is, we built the river intake for a lot more water than we're taking out of it now. And, if you look at the ERWS plan, years down the road, there's a doubling of the, or not a doubling, there's an increase in capacity of the plant that's sort of scheduled in the strategic plan for ERWS. There's an increase from 16 to 24 megaliters a day. And further down the stream, even than that, there's a doubling of the plant that was taken into account with the design of the original intake. So the planning that was done at the formative time of the ERWS did include other steps that have to happen as the development of the two users, continues to happen. So there are other aspects of that plan that are in there that, are far enough out in the future that they aren't a concern of the board at this point, but they will be at some point in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Walters. Ms. Woods, you had your hand up next.
Yeah, if I may share my screen, our next monthly bulletin addresses some of these things. So if I could show that to folks, this might help provide some of the information you're looking for. If that's all right, Chair O'Brien.
Carry on. Yes, please.
Can you see our latest update? Yes, okay. So at the bottom, we're working on a monthly production and consumption facts for you. So each month we're going to have the total that the plant and the wells made. So these are our Parksville wells and our ERWS plant. We're going to give you a percentage of division, and we're just working with the RDN on metering so that we can make sure we can have the percentage consumption. So each month this is going to be a common fact that's going to come at the end of your bulletin. So, I mean, if we were to look back on that over the year, as Dr. Rogers suggested, we would have that statistical data, and you'll be able to see each month where we're sitting at our consumption.
Thank you. My screen just froze there for a second there, but okay, we're back. Thank you, Belinda. Thanks very much, Belinda, for that. And that will be very helpful information. Just to reiterate, that is coming out in a news release or in just a report to the board?
This will be in our operating updates that you receive every month. So you'll get it. I was waiting for this meeting to see if there was anything else that was already in our report that you talked about, because I wanted to give you some fresh, new, exciting stuff. So you'll be getting that this week. And so the first week of each month, we've made a commitment that we're going to try and have this report for you. And then Deb puts it on our website. So it is also available for anybody in the public to see as well.
That's great. And I find those informations, the regular information sessions, very, very helpful. Thank you very much. Mayor Main, you have your hand.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to support the motion only if for no other reason than why we would be wanting to bring the region into doing a management function. It in fact is, and it states very clearly in our agreements that Parksville will be handling the management of the ERWS system. So I think that that's an important factor. We don't need to be crossing lines here. It gets too complicated if that's the case. I think that we, if we want to do something like this in the future, I think that we have to look at Parksville leading the charge on that. I also think that Director Rogers made the point that it's not in anybody's budget at this point in time. This is not, in my guess, would not be an inexpensive project to undertake. And I would think that we need to make sure that we have the funds available to do this. So I at this point in time, I'm not, and thirdly, sorry, go back for 1 second. Thirdly, to Mr. Walters' comments, I agree. We've only been in operation for a little bit better than a year. We don't know what we don't know at this point in time. We're still working our way through warranty issues. We're still working our way through establishing training and daily operations. And until we get all that sorted out, I think we need to get that done before we start undertaking something that for the future. So I would think that this is something that perhaps in the future could be looked at and looked at favorably.
Thank you for that, Mayor Main. Director, did you have your hand up, Director Wallace? Sorry, yes, Director Wallace, you had your hand up, yes.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll just be very brief. And those are the reasons stated, or the reasons why I can't support your motion. Also understanding that the RDN through the DWWP is certainly has other motions in play already regarding water budget analysis, similar to what was conducted in the news for the French Creek watershed, the next one over. So, certainly knowing my concerns, I guess, with your motion were jurisdictional. So that's why I can't support it. Thank you.
And that's fine. And I truly appreciate all your comments. And that was really the intent of having an open discussion here. Anyways, folks, we're the leaders in our community here, and we're the ones that have to ask these questions. And other than Mr. Director Rogers and Mayor Mayn's previous experience, as newcomers to this, we need to have the backing anyways to understand. I appreciate all of your comments. I'll withdraw the motion as it stands anyways, but I do appreciate the staff's involvement in this and the updates that we're getting from Belinda anyways, and it's going to be very helpful moving forward. Thank you for the discussion. If I can move on right now, I believe, of course, my screen is timed up. Second. No other new business at this time. So I'll move on to questions and comments from the public, if I may. I understand there is a Mr. Wicks under 8.1 that is coming into our Zoom meeting. There you are, Mr. Wicks. Thank you for joining us. I will turn over to you, Mr. Wicks, if you could right now. The floor is yours, sir.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to question or comment on water source protection. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine at my level here, but
thank you. Yeah. Okay, so water source protection is part of the drinking water system, and it is a requirement under the Ministry of Health or the provincial health regulations. So uh-oh. Now my screen has locked.
We know that feeling.
Yeah, so we'll try it this way. It should unlock it. Anyway, yes, the English, I've got 3 questions basically to ask the board. Will the Englishman River Water Service initiate a water source protection initiative within the catchment area for the water? Will the board take action to alleviate and manage risks and costs associated with the clay banks? That subject has already been brought up, but that could be resolved fairly easily. Will the board explore the logical option to store winter water at an elevation and pipe the clean water under gravity for summer use? That requires, clean water requires very little, if any, treatment. So it would seem to be a fairly obvious thing to do, but here we go. So just for the people who are new, who may not understand that there's about 300 square kilometers of catchment area for the Englishman River, and basically none of it is protected. There are no there's no limitations on what's happening within that area. And to go back to clay banks, you maybe already hadn't seen enough of it, but to show a different perspective, the clay banks are on the Englishman River, and the river is running along the base of the Englishman River. And this is the kind of thing that happens in the wintertime when the clay banks let loose and all that sediment goes down the river. That's the old intake, not the new one. And they're situated about 8 kilometers south of the estuary, but upstream of the new water treatment plant. And the reason that there's a lot more issue with those clay banks than there ever has been before, since river edge development was built, there's stormwater storage areas up at river's edge that basically hold water during a storm and release it to the ground. And the clay banks are situated maybe a kilometer or less from that storage, but the river is about 30 meters below this area. So seepage occurs through the banks and is continuing all year long. So the ground becomes saturated, and with the river being so narrow at that point, it's one of the narrowest points in the river. The reason the river is narrow is because the large woody debris that was inserted there by DFO and other groups a few years ago is pushing the river over toward the clay bank. These large woody debris are cabled in with massive amounts of cable, so they can release sometimes and move a bit, but they basically clog the river on the west side, forcing the river over to the east side. And this is a minor collapse of, this has happened many times. I've got a dozen photographs of this kind of thing. This is from the top of the bank, and you can see at the point where the arrow is, the river is forced over to the bank. Now it's getting more and more forced over to the bank, and the flow is picking up sediments just from the bank without the sloughing off of the material. When it sloughs off, this is a slide taken just a month ago. There have been 2 or 3 big collapses since January this year. And this one, the slide went across the river and actually blocked the river for a while, but the river was running quite slowly at the time. So there would have been a sediment surge downstream. However, it didn't cause any catastrophic event. If more of the bank comes down, then that's when you can get flooding further downstream, and a surge of water can go down all at once. Now, this is a new log, cabled log, that's moved downstream from above and positioned itself right opposite the clay banks, and that's about 1 meter above the water level. So the problem is getting worse. It's not getting any better, but the solution is really simple, is just to create a diversion. I'll go through quickly because an engineer would see this and say, yes, it's possible. A diversion channel and recreate a stream to where it was maybe 50 years ago, further to the west. So the river doesn't go near the clay banks. Problem solved. No clay in the water from that. And the new river channel could be established within, I'd say, a week or 2 of actual work with big equipment, revegetated, and the clay banks would be away from the river channel. Problem solved. So I have to emphasize, big equipment, that could be done in a week or 2 and not inexpensive. The cost of less than one of the sediment bags that you're taking out of the river because the sediment is in the river. So the new channel would be free of that sediment. It's not to say there's other issues that affect the river, but the better option would be to take the water in the wintertime, have it stored upstream, piped under gravity and high pressure through the treatment plant, and it would be almost pure when it went in and even more pure when it came out. And I rest my case, and I think I'm under 5 minutes. So the description of how that's done is on my website from 2015. The other slides were from 2013. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Wicks, for your presentations. And the question here is, can I defer to the experts? Would any of our experts on staff like to comment at this time? Mr. Doxey or Belinda, or any questions for Mr. Wicks?
Thank you, Chair Brian. We don't have any questions for Mr. Wicks at this time.
Thank you, Belinda. Thank you so much. Okay, so everyone, thank you for your presentation, Mr. Wicks. And there's no questions at this time from the board. Thank you for your time. So if there's no further new business at this time, I'd like to call for adjournment if I could. Do I have a mover and a seconder for adjournment at this time? Mayor Main moved, and Director Wallace, your hand is just below the screen. Thank you, Director Wallace. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thanks, folks, for your time, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.